Welcome back to our Line Opinion panelists for one final discussion this week. A scandal in Santa Fe is growing fast. This week we learned about new accusations of sexual harassment and bullying involving State Senator Daniel Ivey Soto. Common Cause New Mexico and other groups issued a second open letter to state senators detailing more complaints of alleged harassment, gender-based bullying, and inappropriate advances. That's after their first letter last month, where one female lobbyist laid out specific accusations of inappropriate touching, harassment, and bullying. It's worth pointing out that we are taping this on Thursday, and as of this moment, Senator Ivey Soto remains a senator. Now, given these new accusations, Daniel, as an ex-senator yourself, should he step down?
First of all, Gene, I was from the smarter side of the house. I was a representative, so that's where.
Sorry about that. You were a house man.
That's where the brains and the greater basketball record resided when I was in the legislature. I just want to go on record with that. At some point, I mean, that's always an individual question, right? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what the party is telling him, to find out what the leadership is telling him. It seems to me that Senator Ivey Soto is reaching an untenable position right now, right? That there's just, it's just going to be very difficult for him to, be able to navigate. Back in the days, you could get away with these types of things, accusations, because it was a small bubble up there, right? You had a few media guys, you had a couple statewide newspapers. If you were able to get your local hometown reporter to understand you're not a bad guy, you could survive. But now with social media and the things like this, it's just way too much. And when I say survive, I don't mean from a scandal of, harassing people. I'm just saying, you think about the amount of people that got DUIs or had issues up there that it never affected them later on. Today, I just think he's in a place now where, I don't think that he's got anybody advocating on his behalf on the legislative side. And that's going to be difficult when they go into the committee to say, listen, we're going to make a change. The other thing that makes it difficult is that people aren't thinking about, regardless of the people involved. Again, I feel for everybody that's involved in this situation, the victims, the people that are the accusers, Senator Ivey Soto as well. I mean, everybody has to be thought of. But at the end of the day, you have to also say it's a pretty safe Democrat district, I believe, that he's a senator in. And so, he's going to get primaried, and you're just not sure that the leadership of the party is going to say, we want to spend a bunch of money protecting you or knocking you out. So this is the opportunity to do it. I think you'd see leadership dig their heels in if it was more of a swing seat, right, on either side, saying, hey, we don't want to lose that vote. But when things like this happen and you're from a very safe seat for that party, it's really easy for the party to say it's time to make a change.
Interesting point there. Crystal, the Senate is, sorry, Dan, you're a former House Minority Whip. Didn't mean to put you on the Senate side there. But Crystal, the Senate is conducting a formal investigation into the complaints. But beyond that, we don't have many details because, according to policy at the Roundhouse, investigations into harassment complaints are confidential. Doesn't it seem logical that the State Ethics Commission should handle cases like this?
Absolutely, in terms of the potential part of it, but you have to think of, coming from the lens of transparency. And I hope, Senator Dee Dee Feldman would be proud of me to say this. It's like, you have to protect. There's a time for transparency and there's a time to protect the victims or those that have been affected by this. And so I understand that the Ethics Commission should really evaluate the scenario, the situation, but from a higher level perspective, not necessarily the details of the accusations, because you don't want to start re-triggering anybody that had dealt with the sexual harassment, the uncomfortable situations, et cetera. I'm sorry. I have to go back to, Dan, I appreciate what you're saying, and especially because of your insight. You're way smarter than me, and I'll probably be the only person saying this. You're way smarter than me when it comes to the politics of politics, right? But when it comes to sexual harassment and gender-based accusation, or negatively gender-based accusations, at the end of the day, those come first. The victims, those that have been harassed, have to come first in a situation, especially since Emerge New Mexico is involved now, and Common Cause, among other nonprofits that are very closely aligned. Yes, if he decides not to resign, that's his prerogative. But without a doubt, he's going to be negatively impacted on the next election that he has.
Crystal, if he doesn't resign, should the Senate move to expel him?
I will let him, Senator Ivy Soto, dig his own grave. And that's what I'm going to say about that. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at his interviews and the way that he's handling the situation, and I applaud, as a public relations professional, I applaud the fact that he said that he's a no comment kind of guy. But I have a tendency, just like him, when you open your mouth and you don't know what's going to come out of it, he is making things worse for himself. So if he doesn't resign, he's just gonna keep digging that hole. Yeah. End of discussion.
Gene, I gotta ask Crystal,
Please.
did you think that I said that we shouldn't be supporting the victims?
No. That's not what I said. What I mean is, I understand the politics of it, and I appreciate you having that insight, but I don't think he's going to continue in his seat because the victims' voices are going to be louder than the political voices.
I got you. Okay, I just want to make sure. I mean, I'm not advocating or saying you should get away with this, and I'm not. I feel for all the victims that have come forward. I just think that lots of times, I was just trying to give an inside perspective of the politics, knowing that that's something that we were talking about. But
it's an interesting point there. Dave, let me swing you in here. The executive director of previously mentioned Common Cause New Mexico. I love this point. She says there is a broader toxic culture at the Roundhouse when it comes to lawmaker interactions with lobbyists. That includes drinking and the important part to me, an expectation of some level of harassment or bullying. Now, I think that's really getting down to the nut of it to me, that we've got this system now where people are like, you know what, this is the way it goes down. You should expect a hard time here. That's got to go somehow. I'm interested in your take on that.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of this is generational. I think that, Daniel Ivy Soto, he's a little bit younger than I am. And, but I think that if you spend any time speaking to millennials, like, they are so in tune with what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make any excuses for what's happened here. And if there is, a culture in the legislature and in the Roundhouse and the body politic in Santa Fe that needs to be changed. Listen, the best thing you can do is use your vote, get younger people, get more women in there, and that's going to solve it as much as anything.
Mm-hmm. Daniel,
well, and I want to comment on that toxic culture too, Please. Really quickly.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's I don't know enough, but I think one of the things that always, when I first started going around the Roundhouse and as a communications professional, just simply complimenting the work. It's all a game. It's all a show to actually see and connect and get to know people and relationship building and all of these different things. So I definitely understand where Heather is coming from, the executive director of Common Cause New Mexico. But again, what Dave said, it is a little bit of the old school way of thought, but it goes back to the conversation we were all having very candidly. How do you modernize the legislature so you're not just whining and dining all the time? You're actually making effective work, including on the downtime. And it's not just always about partying. And everybody loves a good party. I know I do, but it is a very different culture whenever you're lobbying, and I respect that to come to light instead of behind the scenes.
Daniel, what do you make of the idea? It's been reported that Mr. Ivy Soto was cracking open bottles of wine and killing bottles of wine with the lobbyist in his office. And I don't want to get into what's very common. Is that not a sign that we need to be more professional here? I mean, there's a lot of folks that would look at that from the outside looking in and saying, you know what, that's your problem right there. You got people who feel like it's okay to just get drunk in the middle of the day, and then things happen, of course, as we know, when there's alcohol involved. You're a former legislator. Should all these things be banned officially?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you're going to ban all these things, right? I mean, the answer isn't banning all this stuff. I mean, the answer is better choices, right? Know who you're electing that's going to make better choices.
Right.
I mean,
my character, 100%.
I remember a good friend of mine once told me when I first got elected, and I tried to live by this up there. Not that I was any magnet for attracting people that want to come spend time alone with me. I mean, I was sort of ostracized, but I tried to live my legislative career by the Billy Graham rule, right? And Billy Graham used to say, people used to ask Billy Graham all the time, how have you maintained a scandal-free life when back in the 80s when all these scandals were coming up? And he said, I've got the Billy Graham rule. I'm never alone in a room with the door closed with a single woman unless it's my wife. And I made a point when I was in the legislature that, if anybody came to see me, I tried man, woman, constituent, not constituent. I always had a staffer in there with me, for the length of that conversation. And, it was rare that you would shut the door. Now, obviously, if a friend comes in.
But what about the legislators who are not as conscientious, Dan? I love the story, but what do we do about the people who want to get loaded in the middle of the day?
What do you want to do? They're running for office. I mean, at some point we have to realize elections have consequences, right? I mean, I'm having this conversation now with friends of mine about.
Are we supposed to know this about these personalities when they're running for office?
You should get to know it. How do you not know it? I mean, you're out with people. There's plenty of indicators. There's plenty of ways to get to know people. Look, you can look at who's supporting them, where they worked, who they're running with, what their platforms are. And I'm not saying you should know this the first time, Gene. There's going to be an opportunity coming up here shortly. I'm not picking on Senator Ivy Soto. There's going to be a situation coming up here shortly where he may say, "I'm not getting out." Right. And you know what? We'll know loud and clear what his constituents think, right? I mean, we knew when I was in the legislature, there were people who got in trouble for things, and they got reelected. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's our job to try to put a bubble around everybody and say we have to have rules to protect people. People have got to be smart enough to know who they're voting for, what they're getting in their legislator, and making honest, conscientious decisions about that.
Thanks again to our line panel as always this week. All right, be sure to let us know what you think about any of the topics the line covered on our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram pages.